Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for having me here. First, it's always good to have to come and do one of these because it causes you to stop and actually think for a few minutes, and that's an unusual thing that we do nowadays at this rank. And it's a real honor to come and speak to you. After some of my publicized remarks, it's an honor to be invited anywhere in polite company.
General James Mattis, and this is what he's best known for.
Actually, it's a lot of fun to fight him, you know. It's a hell of a hoot. It's fun to shoot some people. I'll be right up with you. I like brawling.
Years ago, appropriate action was taken at the time. I think that the subsequent 5 years have demonstrated that the lesson was learned.
Watched him interact in NATO at the highest levels, diplomatically, politically, on very sensitive subjects, and I've have every confidence, you know, that skill. I watched that skill.
As you know from the introduction, I have two jobs. I'm the Supreme Commander for Allied Command Transformation, which means I facilitate transformation, that sort of thing, in NATO, and I can get into some details there. And in Joint Forces Command, we have basically about 1.3 million troops under us, and aircraft carriers and airplane squadrons and Army brigades and Marine air-ground task forces. And when General Petraeus or Admiral Keating need forces, they come in and we assign those forces out. That part of Joint Force Command takes very little time. It's very straightforward, and we also train the Joint Forces headquarters that go in to Baghdad, to Bagram, to Hoa, there in Djibouti. We do that sort of thing. Here's where we stand right now. We are superior to enemies in terms of nuclear warfare right now. We've lost a little bit of it. We'll get it back very, very quickly. Sleep well at night. The problem's solved. We are superior in conventional warfare. We've lost some of our edge. When we get the dwell time back to the Chief of Staff of the Army and to the Commandant of the Marine Corps, we will very rapidly recover our edge there. And we are not superior in irregular warfare, and that's what we've got to do. And the reason I bring this up is, as I studied from Kabul on, trying to figure out what I have to do to help transform, I went back through history and found how do armies transform, how have militaries transformed throughout history. They identified a problem and solved it. They didn't assign the supreme commander for transformation, say, there, we solved the problem. They didn't come up with some wrong-headed bumper sticker about revolution in military affairs and decide that was going to change the fundamental nature of war. The fundamental nature of war will change about the same time the fundamental chemical composition of water changes, okay? War is war, unpredictable, bizarre at times, muddling. We muddle our ways in. If I was to sum up everything I've learned in 35 years of wearing this uniform, it could be summed up in 3 words when you go into a fight. Improvise, improvise, improvise. And the more we anticipate, the more we try to get it right ahead of time, the less you have to improvise in combat. You will always have to improvise. But how do we get it right? The way the U.S. military addressed this was we took the Joint Operating Environment, the JOE we call it for short, we always have an acronym, and we wrote what we think the problem is. Remember, we have to identify the problem. We laid out what the operating environment looks like that the joint force will operate in the future. And so we have a problem statement and we have a solution, and now we take that solution and we test it. We experiment with it, we shoot holes in it, that sort of thing. Because if we don't set the problem right, we are probably going to get it wrong. I don't care how short you Marines cut your hair or how fast you run 3 miles. If we get the concepts wrong, as the Israelis saw in Second Lebanon War, your boys, no matter how brave, are going to catch RPGs in the chest, and you're not going to accomplish your objectives. So when you get concepts incorrectly done, then you really pay a price. Our job is not to get it 100% correct. You will never get it 100% correct. We just don't want to get it completely wrong. And that's where we were off on the effort over the last few months to get this thing, I think, about right. We are absolutely certain that we will fight in the future. I was asked to talk about 21st century warfare. We will fight in coalitions, first, last, and always. We will be fighting against enemies in hybrid conditions. War is war. I accept that. The bottom line is we do not want the U.S. forces to be dominant and irrelevant in the future, and we can do that. That is what we must avoid by getting the problem right and the solution right. You take on the U.S. Air Force or the Naval Aviation, Marine Aviation at 15,000 feet in a fighter, NATO Air Forces. You only have one role, fugitive. You better fly away real fast or you're going to get shot out of the air. You take on a U.S. Navy on the high seas, they'll burn you to the waterline. That's all there is to it. You take on a U.S. Army in the open desert, in open terrain and mechanized warfare, the Army will annihilate you. That taking on whatever the Air Forces leave untouched, which won't be much. But the area that we are not superior in is irregular warfare. And we are going to make irregular warfare, per Secretary Gates' speech about balance, we are going to make it a core competency of the U.S. military. We're not going to hold our breath. We're not going to say it's going to go away. That's not going to happen. And we're going to figure this thing out and decide who does what in this effort. It doesn't mean that every service is 50-50 conventional and irregular. Actually, it means an awful lot of our troops are going to have to fight across that entire spectrum.
Over more than a decade of war, none of the deployments or war's grim daily realities have lessened their sense of purpose or the infectious high spirits of the CENTCOM team. The summer soldiers are long gone, Mr. Secretary, and here today stand the reminder of America's awesome determination to defend herself. Here today you see a reminder to the maniacs who, by attacking us on 9/11 and thinking that they could scare us, we remind them that the descendants of Valley Forge don't scare. Mr. Secretary, Chairman, I would happily storm hell in the company of these troops who I haven't the words sufficient to praise, so I will not try. They know how strongly I believe in them, how strongly they have demonstrated to the world that free men and women can fight like the Dickens. The cost has been severe. Our nations have lost many of our beloved sons and daughters. Many others have been wounded, and many of them grievously. Yet after more than 10 years of war, our ranks remain filled by top-quality volunteers, volunteers who have looked beyond the hot political rhetoric and answered our country's call, true patriots who have humbled me with their devotion to duty, true patriots who have signed a blank check payable with their lives to the American people. General Austin and Mrs. Austin, Lloyd and Charlene, old friends, welcome back to America's varsity and welcome back to Tampa. Lloyd, we've served side by side repeatedly. I can think of no one better prepared to command CENTCOM, and I pass to you the finest warfighting team on the earth. I bid you all a fond farewell. Thank you.